Tyrone TG3 here, Pocket Monster. Hot Eye Zones, episode 106 and 107. These episodes are titled Mega Awesome, The Off Limits Duskfall, and episode 107, The Two of Us as Friends. Oh man, these are two very ult heavy episodes, ult character development episodes. Obviously these were needed because, you know, ult needs character development. Plus, obviously we already built up to that dusk ball, and now we get to see what's inside that dusk ball. So episode 106 starts off as Mega Awesome, The Off Limits Dusk Ball, where we see that ult is a bit of a hoarder. Yeah, Ult is a bit of a hoarder, and he keeps the ship kind of messed up. And I'm going to come back to this because there's some things I agree with and disagree with, and it's a very messy, super messy thing. Anyway, because of this, Ult ends up having a fight with Roy on the ship, and he basically runs out. That's pretty much how this ends. He runs out. He gets frustrated with Roy and he walks out. Molly's the only one that really saw him left, but Molly's not going to say anything because Molly ran away when she was younger too, so she kind of gets it. So she just sort of lets him go. Whatever. We end up seeing that Ult befriends this one kid who has a graphite eye. I do not remember his name, nor will I feel like it's going to be important after this, so I'm not going to go through the effort of remembering it. But we see that the kid with the graphite eye has a graphite eye that gets along well with Ult's sable eye. And the thing is, it's also very picky. It's a picky eater. Well, graphite eye's paint that comes off of its fingers is based off of the saliva. And the only way the saliva can change is if it eats different berries. So the only way for the kid to have graphite eye paint with several different colors is if to eat different berries, which is hard because it's a very picky eater. But Sableye befriends it so it's able to try out different berries. So they got this little montage of it eating different berries in order to change the color of its paint. Eventually they do get along, and Ult explains that the dusk ball that he has is like has a super strong Pokemon that's inside of it, but he can't summon it for some reason. And then literally as they wake up the next morning, we see that Ult's Pokeball, the dusk ball, has been stolen by the kid with the graphite eye. And it's just like, that's grimy. That's super grimy. And after that, he goes to chase off where the kid could be, and thankfully they're able to find the kid pretty easily due to the fact that graphite eye leaves like a trail of its paint behind while it's walking. It's a bad habit of it. Let's call it for what it is. Convenient clue, context, plot relevance, so that the character can be exactly where the other character is and not get lost in a generic area. So Sableye and Ult end up finding the Graphite Eye kid and Graphite Eye. And the Graphite Eye kid wants to sell the dusk ball in order to get a strong sphere so that he can use the strong sphere to make Graphite Eye's painting even more beautiful. Well, this doesn't exactly work out, and later on we see that Ruber and Indy is their names. They show up and they're going to take the dusk ball that has Roy's Pokemon, that has Ult's Pokemon in it, sorry. And when that ends up happening, it's a battle, and they both end up using Darmanitan. One regular Darmanitan and one Galarian form Darmanitan, in which I gotta say, Ruber and Indy's whole gimmick, I guess, is using Pokemon of different forms, like the same Pokemon but of a different variant. So for example, I wouldn't be surprised if in like one fight they end up using Quagsire and Clodsire, both of all forms of Wooper and Paldean Wooper respectfully, or they wind up using like Sock and Throw, or Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. You know, they always like do the Pokemon in pairs, essentially. Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Illumise, Volbeat, stuff like that. Well, when they end up fighting off against ULT, ULT winds up battling them, and Sableye more or less was winning the fight at first, but then immediately starts losing the fight after the Mega Evolution stuff. Sableye is able to hold its own for a little bit up until Dragonite comes out of the Dusk Ball. And yes, Dragonite is the Pokemon that comes out of the Dusk Ball because ULT says that he wants to protect Sableye and protect his friend, the Grafaiai kid. So it turns out that the Dusk Ball only responds to ULT's need to protect people. That's when Dragonite will come out. Dragonite won't come out under any other circumstances other than to protect people, which is unique. It's a very unique form of disobedience. We've had Pokemon just flat out be mean and disobedient. We've had Pokemon be lazy and disobedient. We've had Pokemon be like way too happy and disobedient, where like they're not being mean, but they are being disobedient. Kind of like Dawn's Pachirisu or Iris's Emolga, where they're happy but they're also disobedient, or sassy and disobedient. And then we've had Ash's Charizard, which was lazy and disobedient. And then we've had like Iris's Dragonite, who was angry and disobedient. So we've had so many different types of disobedient Pokemon in the series. So it's a very different one when the Pokemon is disobedient, but for a completely different reason. It's sort of like a loyalty type of disobedient. Like, I'm not gonna listen to you unless you are about that bravery life or that chivalrous lifestyle, which works out fine because ULT's character trait is that ULT is mostly like kind of feral, like he cares for himself and nobody but himself. It takes him a while to open up to others, but not because he's shy or anything. He's more like he brags about himself a lot, and he's like putting on a tough guy act. So basically this is a lesson to teach ULT to not be selfish. My one weird problem, though, is that the Pokemon that's inside the Dusk Ball in question, Dragonite, I feel that Dragonite being in the Dusk Ball was not a decision made by the writers of Horizons. I know, this sounds weird. It sounds weird, but I'm saying that it doesn't feel... The Dusk Ball is such a random Pokeball to put a Dragonite in. And I guess the problem with this is that I'm basing it off of Pokemon Sun and Moon, probably, where the Dusk Ball was used, but it was used for like... What was it used for? Midnight Lock and Rock or whatever? Or the Gladian used it for that? It had to either been Midnight Lock and Rock or... I think, what was Savali used for? What Pokeball was Savali be caught with? It'll come to me in the chat. But I remember, like, Gladian used different Pokeballs for different Pokemon, too. But in that example, it made sense. It correlated kind of with what the Pokemon is. Dusk form Lycanroc being in the Dusk Ball makes sense. It literally says Dusk in the name. And I don't know. When I think of Dusk Ball, right, and I also think of Dusk Ball containing Pokemon that is disobedient, my brain tends to think of like a dark type Pokemon, or a rugged, mean Pokemon. So like a Pokemon that's either a ghost type or a dark type or something that justifies it. Dragonite is like a derpy looking dragon Pokemon. And it's not even like Iris's Dragonite, where it was kind of mean. But even then, Dragonite just doesn't fit the Dusk Ball aesthetic to me. What I feel happened is Pokemon Legends ZA was coming out, and Pokemon Horizons had reached a time skip, introduced a new character, had a plot for him to have a Pokemon in a Dusk Ball, and then at last possible minute, the writers were like, hey, guess what? Like, the Pokemon company came to the writers and was like, hey, check it out. So Legends EA is coming out, right? And Dragonite was revealed in that trailer. Can you go ahead and make the Pokemon that's in that Dusk Ball a Dragonite so that we can, promote its Mega Evolution? And then they were like, that goes completely against what we planned on having in the Dusk Ball. We were going to have like Pangoro or I don't know, some Dusknoir or something evil or something dark, something ghost, something mischievous, something that fits the Dusk Ball. And they were like, yeah, that's cute and all, but we really need you to go ahead and put that Dragonite in that Dusk Ball. And they were like, are you sure? And they were like, we're positive. And they're like, okay. And that's how we wound up with it. I'm sorry. I just don't feel as though the Dusk Ball was the Pokemon that was intended to be in that Dusk Ball was Dragonite. I could definitely be wrong. I'm open to the idea of being wrong. Dragonite just does not feel like the Pokemon that was supposed to be in that ball. Maybe I just see things in a weird way. I'm very ready to be wrong on that case. But it just doesn't fit. I'm sorry. I know. I was prepared for Spiritomb to be in that thing. I was prepared for maybe a Paradox Pokemon that is of the dark type. I can't think of any right now, like Brute Bonnet or something, I guess. I don't know. Or Iron Jugular. Something. Not that. Not that. That does not fit the mold of what I believe should have been in there. Maybe a Mega Tyranitar. Tyranitar is dark type and rock type, and it's aggressive. Fine. Not that, though. Not that. Anyway, let's move on. Ruber and Indy end up getting defeated. They retreat. Ult and Sableye run after them, and then later in the episode we see that Roy is looking at certain rocks and he notices that one of the bad habits that Ult suddenly has is to pick up rocks. We can go back into former episodes and see, does he actually do this? Apparently Ult collects rocks, or collects rocks in the area. I guess because Sableye eats rocks. So, I guess he goes around and collects certain rocks and things, forms them as memorabilia for them being there. And Roy's like, oh, okay, Ult collects these because they're special to him. I gotta go apologize. No, I'm sorry. So we're coming back to it. He can collect them. Fine. Have memorabilia. Absolutely have memorabilia. I'm not knocking that. But you still gotta clean up the area. Liko pointed out at the very beginning of the episode that Ult's room is also the observatory deck for the ship. We need that space. They need that space to walk around in. I don't care if you collect these things as memorabilia. It's in the freaking hallway. Move it. Does that make me insensitive to that? No. It's not insensitive because Ult is being insensitive to everybody else that needs to walk around in the ship. What? So that he holds these things special, he's allowed to clutter up the entire place? No, that's bullshit. Ult can't be a slob just because he likes the things that he's choosing to be a slob with. Whether he holds them near or dear or not, it's still inconsiderate. So everybody else has to break their necks trying to go to and fro the observatory area just because he wants to be a jackass? I'm sorry. That doesn't pass for me. And Roy has to go apologize to this dude for this. What? I think they should reach an agreement to the very least. Hey, you need to clean up. You can keep the rocks. Hell, even if Roy had thought of an alternative and said, hey, I made the, Fuecoco and I, Crocolore and I have made these boxes for you, and we labeled them. That way, every rock you collect in your journey, you can put it in these containers or something. That would have been a much better situation. But no, Roy has to go, I'm sorry I was making you throw your blah, blah, blah away. I'm like, what, dude? No, you don't have to apologize to him. This is their space. They're using it, and it is crucial towards their travels. How come Ult gets to be a jerk in this situation and get away with it? And Roy's like, I'm being insensitive to Ult. No, you're not. You're setting boundaries. Whatever, fine. Anyway, we move on to the next episode, which is episode 107. And in this episode, Ult ends up continuing to chase them. Ult chases them into near the base, but it turns out it was a trap. they wanted Ult to follow them. That way they can get caught in. With that being said, the rest of the Rising Volt Tacklers can come in and they'll get trapped as well. It's a hostage situation. Well, thankfully, Sableye was just able to get out, and for some reason, Spinel's stupid and let Sableye go. Pokemon can communicate with people pretty efficiently, even though they only say their names. He probably should have caught Sableye, so there's no witnesses. But no, Spinel decides to be incompetent for reasons unknown. But yeah, it's to lead the others in, which I get. He wanted to be a trap situation, but the problem is, this means they get more forces to fight on their side. So the trap is stupid and the area isn't even heavily guarded. Once Roy and the others get there, there's basically nobody there except for Ruber and Indy. Yeah, they trap them, but come on, like there's strengths in numbers and they don't, like, it just feels like a dumb plan. No matter how many ways you slice it. Regardless, the only reason Roy is even able to know where he is partially is because he was traveling out there to apologize to him, and then he runs into the Grafai kid, only for the Grafai kid to tell him, hey, I saw Ult go that way anyway. Once he goes into the base, they end up in a battle against Ruber and Indy again. Only this time, Ruber and Indy are using Darmanitan, Galarian form, and regular form, but this time, they're using their Zen modes, which have higher special attack and special defense versus the other forms that had high physical attack and physical defense. They're focusing more on the special strategy rather than the physical one. But in combination to that, they also have Rabscas, and the Rabscas are using the attack Gravity to make it so all of the Pokemon are weighed down, and thus they're unable to fight effectively. During this fight, it looks like they're all about to lose, except for Roy, who could easily just Mega Evolve as Lucario, but he's not going to do it. And Ult basically states that he needs to protect everyone. Once he says this, Dragonite yet again comes out, but here's a twist. The ZA trailer, Dragonite, ends up Mega Evolving into Mega Dragonite. Because he evolves into Mega Dragonite, he ends up overpowering them somehow. The problem was still that the gravity was out, and gravity forces all Pokemon that fly in the air to slam down. Now, granted, before this, we see that Captain Pikachu wound up using Volt Tackle from like a very high space and uses the gravity's weight to bring it down to knock them. Basically, he's using the gravity to gain more power, and it's really well animated, by the way, so it looks cool. And then Dragonite winds up going in and using Hyper Beam to pretty much wipe the rest of the crew out, and thus they're able to gain an upper hand. Roy finally decides to Mega Evolve Lucario. I guess it's because he didn't want to outshine the Dragonite that was already there. So Lucario Mega Evolves. So now we get two Mega Pokemon that are going in and fighting off against the rest of the gang. Ruber and Indy end up getting defeated and they're able to escape the base. After that, Ult basically states how Dragonite works. Dragonite only comes out to protect people, so Ult makes it a job in order to protect Roy and the others. He basically considers them as his friends now, which is basically their way of saying Ult has character development and views them as friends. So there we go. Ult returns back to the ship, and with that said, Molly basically gives him a wink like, hey, I knew you'd come back eventually. You just needed to find yourself. And that's basically the end. These two episodes glue together perfectly, so I'm going to give them one score, and that score is pretty much going to be a 7. It does everything it needs to do. It's okay. I know after that rant, you probably thought I was going to give it a much lower score. I'm fine with all of this. It is weirdly like some problems with it, but not enough to make me hate the episode. I do like the character development Ult goes through. I do like the premise of like how the events and the plots connect. I don't like how incompetent Spinel is, and I don't like that they don't find a happy marriage solution for Ult and his hoarding problem. the character development at least was there, and it focused on more or less Ult being there for other people, which is something that needed to be focused on anyway, and Ult needed some time away from the group anyway, because sadly most of Ult's character development has been with the others, so I'm not going to knock the opportunity that Ult has to be by himself for a little bit, just to develop further, because we had a lot of episodes that involved most of the Rising Volt tacklers, so Ult needed some episodes to himself. So that is pretty good. So yeah, definitely giving it a 7 out of 10. And it's interesting now that we see that Dragonite is a part of his team, but very conditionally. And I believe that we are supposed to be running into some episodes about Roy and Ult specifically soon here in episodes 112, 113, and 114, which are the Mega Evolutioned special episodes that basically predate some stuff that happens before the time skip while Roy was in Kalos. So that'll be tackled then. But in the meantime, we've got episodes coming up, 108, episode 109, and I will go ahead and wind up reviewing those two together. Yeah, even though those two are kind of different, I'll review those two together. And then obviously I'll review episodes 110 and 111 together, because they are like the big finale until we move on to the next major arc of Pokemon Horizon. So with that being said, I will see y'all then, everybody. Tyrone TG3 out.